What's going on, guys? It is me, Tyson Trainer, back with another episode of Sports Talk. And today we're going to be talking about optimizing just your overall nutrition and progress, and making sure that you're going to be supporting yourself as best as you can. So one thing that I think when it comes to optimizing is this should come once you've started nailing all of your basic habits and once you've gotten a good routine. Okay, so when I talk about optimizing, this comes to looking at your nutrients, looking at your protein timing, looking at your food timing, looking at all these things, but you can't run before you walk. Okay, and so the most important thing when we first start out, whether you're an athlete or whether you're someone who's kind of getting in the routine of things, is to get your calories consistent based on what your goals are. All right, and so ideally, optimization should be coming once you've kind of achieved your roughly weight goal, because it's hard to optimize when you're not used to just getting in the routine of things, And like I said, for you just trying to get into a overall routine with your nutrition, especially even if you are an athlete who hasn't really focused on that in the past, just get the basic stuff done first. And when I say basics, it means protein and calories, okay? Once we get our protein and calories, then you want to focus on the daily habits that I talked to you guys about. So your fruits, your veggies, your whole grains, your calcium, your healthy fat intakes, all those things should be things you should focus on secondly, all right? And now with that, that's going to take care of a lot of your results regardless, okay? Because your performance as an athlete, especially if you are someone who's a good athlete and you've only just started focusing on your nutrition, just goes to show that, nutrition will help you make some more progress, but you as an athlete are probably just gifted enough to be able to have a lot of progress in, just with what you're doing, regardless of how nailed your nutrition is. But the more dialed your nutrition is, the slightly better progress you're going to get. And again, we're talking about like 1 to 3%, maybe 5% changes, but that 1 to 3 to 5% changes can be between first place and second place, or first place and fifth place, because those small increments, the higher up the ladder we go of athletes, the bigger the difference they're going to make in regards to first versus second place. Okay, so let's say you are ticking off your daily habits, you are hitting enough protein during the day, and you are eating your calories that you need to maintain energy balance and energy availability. If you don't know what energy availability is, go back and listen to the other podcast, right? If you don't know about your energy balance, go back and listen to the podcast. If you don't know your daily habits, go back and listen to the other podcast. Again, do not run before you walk. This is for people who have already started nailing down those things, right? So from here, looking at optimization, how can we look at kind of optimizing everything we can to the best of our abilities with our nutrition? So firstly, we want to make sure you're getting between 4 to 6 servings of protein in during the day, right? I find 4 quite manageable for most people. If you can have more, sweet. If you can't have more and you can only have 4, excellent. When we want to split our protein up, ideally, we want to be making sure we're getting about a minimum of 25 grams of protein per meal, but ideally you just want to spread it out over the total protein intake. So for me, I need 200 grams of protein a day. I eat 4 meals a day. That's 50 grams of protein at each meal. The whole concept of, you can only eat 30 grams of protein at a time with being absorbed is absolute bullshit. You can have more protein, and saying a 55 kilo female versus a 100 kilo male can only have 30 grams of protein each meal just doesn't make sense. And again, if I'm having 200 grams of protein a day, I'm not going to have 6 meals of 30 grams of protein. Okay, so instead we try and optimize our protein by spreading our total intake between 4 to 6 meals. Right now, with those 4 to 6 meals, we try and keep them at least 3 hours apart to activate muscle protein synthesis and to let it come back down, because we need a stimulation, but then we need it to come back down. We've actually seen research where if you're hooked up to an IV drip getting amino acids every day, you actually don't get that up and down activation of muscle protein synthesis, which is why we want to make sure that we do have those gaps. And ideally, 3 to 4 hour gaps would be the best bet. For me, I eat every 3.5 to 4 hours. So usually I eat at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., 3 p.m. and then 6:30 p.m. That's kind of how I like to do it. It keeps things quite simple. It's easy to be able to manage, and it fits in with my lifestyle. Again, based around your training, based on what you're doing, you may have to adjust these here and there, but finding what's ever going to work for you. And you don't have to have 4, you can have 5, you can have 6, but however, at least you're getting at least 25 grams of protein per meal, to splitting it up over how many you can have based on what your body weight is. If you are a lighter individual and you're like, I want to have 6 meals a day, make sure 4 of those meals contain over 25 grams of protein. That is the minimum amount we need to activate muscle protein synthesis. If you're someone who's older, above 40, you're actually going to need more protein per meal, right? So you can start pushing that protein a little bit higher, but I think most of you who are listening are going to be between 24 and 40 to that degree. So making sure you're getting 25 grams of protein at each meal to activate muscle protein synthesis. That would be the first thing. Secondly, pre and post workout timing. So with your pre-workout timing, ideally you'd want to have some type of carbohydrates in the hours before your training, because carbohydrates will fuel your intensity. Anything that requires you to contract muscle and has a high intensity, you're going to want carbohydrates in, all right? So if you're going to do a fasted jog in the morning, or at the moment I sit on my assault bike first thing in the morning, I don't need to have carbohydrates because it's a low heart rate and a low intensity, right? If you are someone who's going to be doing sprints in the morning or weight training or whatever your sport is going to be, and it's at that high intensity mark, having carbohydrates before you work out is going to be ideal. And so if this means you wake up in the morning, let's say 5 o'clock, and you start gym at 6 or 6:30, having some quick source of carbohydrates like an LCM bar, a piece of fruit, a bagel, some crumpets with some honey, something that's purely high glycemic carbohydrates within that 60-minute mark before you work out, okay? If you are going to be training 90 minutes plus between, making sure you have a good mixed meal of carbohydrates, protein, and fats earlier on in the day, ideally whole grains, so then you're going to have a slow breakdown of the food in your stomach, and there's going to be carbohydrates in your bloodstream and in your liver and your muscle glycogen stores for that workout. So if I was to give you guys an example for my pre-workout, today I'm going to be working out in about an hour, and I had my lunch about 30 minutes ago, and my lunch was, actually it wasn't lunch, it was a snack, sorry. It was a bagel with cottage cheese, so slow digesting protein, high carbohydrate, so 50 grams of carbohydrates, and then also having an LCM bar. So I'm getting carbohydrates, slow digesting protein, and also a little bit of peanut butter. So it does have a breakdown slower going into my training, so I can train that 90 to 2 hours after my meal without feeling taxed or having low energy or anything like that. Okay, so carbs, pre-workout would be ideal if it's higher intensity. If it's a low intensity jog or it's very cruisy, don't worry about having pre-workout carbohydrates. And then obviously after our workout, ideally within 90 minutes of working out, you want to try and get some protein in post-workout. If you have the calories allotment for it, try and get some carbohydrates in there too. Some fast digesting carbohydrates would be good, but they're not essential. It is just based on the calories you have free, For me, I have plenty of calories left over, so my meal after my workout is going to be chicken and rice, and like a lot of rice just because it's basic and it's easy. But for you guys, you may be watching your calories, so maybe just having protein in after your workout would be ideal. Now, in saying that, if you've worked out in the morning and it's fasted and it's not high intensity, then you want to make sure you get protein quicker in, because you haven't had any protein or any meal beforehand and you're breaking down muscle when you're exercising. Okay, so then we want to make sure we repair that by having protein as soon as possible after our workout, right? So the further away you eat before you work out, the closer we want to have that protein in after our workout. So if you've slept for 8 hours, you haven't eaten since 8 o'clock, it's now 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to go and do a low intensity workout, it's now 7:30, get that protein in as soon as possible. Okay, now when I say protein doesn't mean protein powder, it just means a protein source. So you got chicken, fish, beef, any of those things, or you can have a protein powder. It's really up to you, right? So again, if you haven't eaten beforehand, get protein as quick as possible. If you have eaten beforehand, give yourself within that 90-minute range to get protein in, and if you have again, we want that 25 grams minimum. And if you have the extra calories, get some high glycemic carbohydrates in. Cereal and protein powder after a workout go great together. So that's on that side of things. And so if you're doing that, if you're eating consistently 4 to 6 meals over the day, you're getting protein regularly, so you're activating muscle protein synthesis, you're eating enough calories in during the day, you're making sure that you're getting your pre and your post-workout timing correctly, you're going to be covering all your bases for the most part. And there's so many other things I could be going into. Carb cycling, higher carb days, lower carb days, all these things. Unless you're someone who's an endurance athlete, that may be beneficial for you, but for most people, you're not going to need to have low carb days, high carb days. You can keep things quite consistent with that side of things. And again, if you're nailing your veggies, your fruit, you're getting all your daily habits in, you're getting all those micronutrients in, you don't really need to work on so much on, getting in exact amounts of carbohydrates and fats. To a degree, you do want to have some mixed meals. Ideally, if you can bias your carbs, what you'd want to probably start doing is focusing more on that 0.6 grams per kilogram of body weight for fat, and then the rest of your rest of your calories coming from carbs. So like for me, at 4,400 calories, if I have 200 grams of protein a day, that's 800 calories. If I have So that'll be for me 50 grams of fat. So that's 450 grams. So out of 4,400 calories, 1,250 calories are going to be from protein or fat. I've got 3,150 calories that's going to come from carbohydrates, and that's about 750 grams of carbohydrates for the day. So that means I'm going to be always fueled, always muscle glycogen full, being able to push myself and be able to keep the intensity high. And that's what's going to work for me. Okay, so again, if you are someone who wants us to really start getting into that, then you start looking at trying to get as much carbohydrates as you can to fuel your intensity and keeping your fats between 0.6 grams to 1 gram per kilo. If you're having 1 gram per kilogram, it's not going to kill you or anything like that. It's just like I'm having 0.6 grams because I want testosterone replacement and I don't need that much fat in my diet, and I prefer carbohydrates. But if you do like to have more fats in your diet because they make your diet enjoyable, they make food taste good, it just keeps you overall consistent, then that's not an issue either. So it really does come up to you and how you kind of want to utilize your calories. But again, if we're looking for optimization, try and manage that fat within 0.6 grams to 1 gram. And that's it. Very simple things to be able to start optimizing. We can go deeper and deeper, but I think for you guys, just starting with that optimization side of things is going to help a long way with pushing that nutrition a little bit further. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, as always, you know where to find me on Instagram at tysonthetrainerr with 2 R's. And until next time, I'll speak to you guys then.